Thought it might be kind of fun to make a video about the mental aspect of being outdoors in a situation that is less than ideal. But before we get started too much into this, let me be upfront. This is not a I almost died type of experience. It's not one of those things, so I'm not going to try and over dramatize it. But I think this is going to be very interesting, and at least it is to me. When I hear other people's stories like this, to me it's fascinating just to hear where they were mentally during this experience. And the one I'm going to talk about is one that I've actually filmed, and it was with me, my brother, and two of his friends. We went into Zion's National Park in southern Utah, and we did a canyoneering trip in Behunin. The whole trip took us about 9 hours. During this trip, it was a very fun one and got very interesting. What happened is, those of you that don't know, you have to be extremely careful when you get into slot canyons because of flash floods. The weather wasn't supposed to be that bad that day, but as we were sitting at this high point, it was kind of decision time. And I turned and looked, and behind us there was a bunch of dark clouds. We've made it to all the uphill climbing. We started at 9:30, it's 12:30 now. Sitting about 3 hours in. High today is supposed to be up to 110, so it's been a pretty warm one. And then we'll start heading down this direction and start hitting some of the rappels. Now, we kind of discussed it a little bit, but we decided to go on. It wasn't that big a deal. So we started dropping down into the canyon. And at this point, we could still turn around and we could hike out if we wanted to. But we kept going. And the weather that was immediately over us was perfect. And we continued down to the first rappel. Now what you have to understand too, in slot canyons, you could have perfect weather right above you. But it could be raining, a torrential downpour miles away, and then that water is going to all funnel into a slot canyon and just come down in a mad rush. So it doesn't matter if it's good right above you. So we commit ourselves to the first rappel, and of course after that there's no way. I mean, we're committed, we've got to go through. But the weather was still nice, still beautiful, very, very hot. In fact, coming down I started getting dehydrated. I was getting severe headaches because of the heat, but which was fine because I took with me plenty of water. So all I did was started drinking more water. I was fine, it went away. But going down that first rappel on the rope, the heat was so bad that you actually had to go down real slow. How far is that next one? Otherwise you just burn your hands.
Man, my hands are burning.
It's warm, huh?
Yeah.
That's how hot it was out there. And of course the friction between the rope and the gear, that generates a lot of heat. So at this point we're committed and we continue down.
Really?
But there was one point during our ordeal, I remember looking up and seeing this. I mean, the log had to have been, I don't know, at least that big around. It was a true mature tree, lodged about 20 feet, 25 feet up in the slot canyon portion, just right, between the two edges of the cliff, or the cliff. So that tells you, I'm looking up at this thing going, oh man, that much water comes down here at times, right? We're walking down the canyon, we're doing the rappels, and we're just having a ball. A lot of fun. The guys that we went out with, me and my brother, they were cool guys. So we get to this one spot, and we rappel into this pool of water. And just as a side note, that pool of water was just pure nasty. It was the grossest thing I've ever been in. But once all four of us get out from this water, and we've kind of got the ropes back in place, the weather started to roll in right on top of us. And all of a sudden, and I wish I would have had it on film, all of a sudden we hear this roar of water coming down the canyon, or what we thought was a roar of water. And it's interesting how long a split second or 1 second can feel when you're thinking, this is it. You know, is this it? I mean, all these things just fire rapidly through your mind. And you know, maybe you guys have experienced that when you're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off and you're thinking, great, I'm going to get in an accident. All these things just fire through your mind. Anyway, so we hear this rush of water just come barreling down the canyon. And as it turns out, where we were, there was a lot of trees in this particular part of the slot canyon. It was kind of an open area. And what it turned out to be was just a huge gust of wind that was coming up the canyon. It was just funneled right up the canyon. And as it was doing so, it was rustling all the trees. And I don't know if you've experienced this before, but when you're out, sometimes in the mountains you think you hear a river, and it turns out just to be the trees, the leaves being rustled by the wind. Anyway, it was such a big gust of wind that that's truly what it sounded like. You know, by this time, the sky had just gone dark, dark, dark. So my thoughts at that point, as we're traveling down, is I was constantly scanning for areas that we could climb, you know, at least to get up as high as you could, and hopefully high enough to be above the water if it were to come down. So just constantly scanning. And I was doing a lot of filming before this. And at this point, I kind of regret it now, but at the time, I understood why I was doing it. The focus was not to film at all. I mean, the focus was we needed to get out of there, and we needed to get out bad and fast. At least that's how we felt. So as we're continuing walking down the slot canyon, lightning would strike, and you'd hear the thunder. And if you've ever been up in the mountains when you've heard lightning and been close to it, I mean, it's amazing. It truly is an amazing feeling to hear and see the lightning and thunder. But this was a whole different experience because the lightning would come, trailed by the thunder, but it amplified itself by just echoing and bouncing off the slot canyon walls. I mean, it was truly amazing to be in there and listen to it and just be in awe of the sheer power that nature is. And that was just more confirming to us that we needed to get out as quickly as possible. I don't recall right now how many more rappels we had left, but I want to say maybe 4 or 5 left. So we knew we had a significant amount of time still to get out of the canyon. But again, so committed, there was no way we could turn around. So it became get out fast. So we continued to travel down, and when you're rappelling hundreds and hundreds of feet above the ground, it's not something you can rush. I mean, well, you can rush, but only to a certain point, because if you don't do things right, you're dead. And that added a whole new aspect of thought, you know, the thought process and the mentality of, okay, here's a potential for flash floods. Here's a potential to, if we don't rig this up correctly and go down slow enough, who knows what could happen. And it was very interesting to try and do all this. And I think we all felt it, but we weren't verbalizing it. Again, this is from my perspective. We continued down, we continued the rappels, and trying to do so very fast. On the very last rappel, it was starting to rain. It wasn't raining hard, but it was just sprinkling. It was coming down. But again, you got to remember that it could be raining hard miles away, and that's the water you're going to get. So we were all pretty pretty aware of the situation, and it was just, it's a fascinating experience. And maybe you haven't experienced that. Maybe you know people who have. Dodge, who's been on the channel before, had a very interesting hunting experience where he discussed similar things, to this nature. And it's just fascinating to listen to. Anyway, so we got an experienced person on the rope and got them to go down first, and then the less experienced. And we then left the most experienced up top to run the rope. I mean, that's how we started directing things. Get the two people who most know what they're doing to rig the rope, because that's going to be your most important. Get the next person who knows what they're doing on the rope first, in case anyone else has problems going down. And that seemed to work okay. So eventually, the first person went down, second, I was the third going down, and then my brother came down fourth. But the mental aspect of having been through that experience is truly one I won't forget, and was very, I don't know if exciting is the word. Exciting, yeah, I guess there's not really one word that can contain the mentality or what I was feeling. I mean, exciting, scared, I'll say it, all these different emotions going through. I mean, an adrenaline rush. I mean, that was fun. I mean, it might sound weird, but truly that was all these emotions just going through and trying to manage the situation and be mentally alert and aware and how to quickly think of something and execute it in a short amount of time, because you knew time was, or you didn't know, but you thought time was going to be of the essence. But again, it was just an amazing experience, and I wish I could do it more justice by the verbiage that I'm using, but anyway, it's just something I wanted to share, and I know you guys have probably had those type of situations out in the mountains, or like I said, you're coming up on an intersection, some car cuts through, and you think you're going to crash, and all these things just split second go through your mind, and it's amazing. It really is kind of a cool experience. I'm glad I've had that experience and can draw from that experience to manage those emotions in the future. And I've had more experiences like that too. And each time you have an experience like that, you build the knowledge base and the experience to handle future experiences where, okay, this is going to get bad, or it's turning bad. What do we need to do to effectively manage it to make the best out of the situation? It was a really neat experience, and I just wanted to share it. So, getting a little further here on time than I wanted to be. So, we'll end it right there, and thanks for listening, guys.
Well, do you guys feel relieved to be out of that slot canyon?
Oh.